All right, so I'm going to get started. I know people are still joining in as we go. I'm Brian Winslow. I work for Brandywine Red Clay Alliance and help coordinate the Christina Watershed Municipal Partnership. And we're partnering with Stroud today for a presentation on funding for large buffers. And if you don't know the Christina Watershed Municipal Partnership, we help 39 municipalities in the Christina watershed. That's Brandywine Red Clay and Brandywine White Clay Creeks. Work on stormwater, improving stormwater, and one of the best ways to do that and most cost effective is planting trees. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce David Wise to take over the presentation. So thank you, David, for giving this presentation to us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, Brian, for hosting me. And thanks to participants for your interest and participation today. So I'm David Wise. I work at Stroud Water Research Center. Stroud is a facility of about 50 people, technicians, PhDs, educators. I'm part of the group of about 6 of us now in Watershed Restoration Group. We try to put the insights of the institution onto the ground in practical ways, and forested buffers are right at the top of our list. So, yeah, and now, Brian, it's I have to wait a second here. It doesn't want to seem to advance now after all of that prep time ahead of time. So
I went to sleep.
Yeah. We'll get her there.
We are recording this for anyone, so we'll post it on the CWMP YouTube channel as well. Is that okay with you, David?
Yep, absolutely. So Stroud's mission is, it's largely an academic facility, but as I say, I'm in the small group of 6 who are doing the applied side of things. Quick outline for today's talk. I'll explain what our offer of assistance is, what the catches are, if there are any, for participating entities. A little bit on why forested buffers are important, and I assume people know a good bit about that. Some tips on how to do it successfully, and then some of the fine print, some of the details on if we are to strike up a working relationship, what would that look like? So the offer that Stroud's making is technical and financial help to establish forested buffers. Our staff would plan and oversee the implementation of the project. We would provide full cost coverage for that installation. We have the option of providing full cost coverage for 3 years of care after planting. So it's can be pretty much a turnkey operation. From the partner side, what we're interested in participating entities such as yourselves to help us identify sites. We are going to prioritize sites that are 2 acres or larger without livestock. There's enormous overhead in all these transactions. So to do a half-acre buffer just becomes cost prohibitive in terms of our overhead side. We would install that buffer per a Stroud design. Happy to have local partner input in consideration along the way, and there would be a 25-year agreement for that project. We'll encourage partners to perform mowing. We're looking for sites to get mowed at least twice yearly for 3 years. We do have the ability to fund that, but I will say it is one of our logistical challenges, finding and deploying contract mowers to these multiple small sites. The care beyond year 3 would fall to the local partner, but that's typically pretty limited. We get a lot of the real needs taken care of in the first 3 years. Why buffers are important. Trees provide benefits to streams in our communities. And if you're an MS4 regulated community with obligations through permits, it can help municipalities meet those requirements because they do provide benefits. I'm not going to belabor what I think many of us on the call already know. Forested buffers have an enormous range of benefits for streams and communities. The Swiss Army knife analogy here is a good and appropriate one. The only one on this slide that I'll touch on is top left, in-stream benefits. That means the ecological services that the stream community between the 2 banks what that provides to our society is really critical. It mentions here 3 to 5 times more biological activity and pollution processing. You'll hear me say more about that. Buffers really have 2 modes of actions. I think what our society has broadly understood is the green arrow mode, where buffers are barriers or filters. What I think our society is only slowly coming to terms with is the yellow, represented by the yellow arrows. It is the in-stream functionality that the buffers actually accelerate and multiply by providing inputs to the stream. So the stream is actually its own self-cleansing agent towards societal goals. This work is not new information, and here's a September 2004 article capturing most of these insights in the National Academy of Sciences. What Stroud did, culminating in that 2004 paper, is essentially take advantage of a schematic. This is an aerial schematic of woodlots and open space in Chester County. Small woodlots, the green polygons, and then the stream segments that are flowing in and out of these polygons become a science opportunity. So what does it matter whether a stream is inside a green polygon underneath the forest canopy, or is immediately adjacent upstream or downstream? What difference does it make? Stroud studied 16 streams in Chester County, here in Southeast PA. Enormous investment of time and energy. Field ecology is notoriously difficult to get statistically significant results. What they found in this comparison of stream sections with forest on their banks compared to stream sections with grass on their banks, they found the forested sections to be 1.5 to 3 times wider. The water flowing through those reaches under the trees was up to 2.5 times slower, meaning it's staying there longer in contact with the organisms that are doing critical water quality purification services for absolutely free. 3 to 5 times more biological activity. And that led to differences, for example, up to 9 times more nitrogen uptake, nitrogen being a common water quality pollutant, up to 2 to 5 times more phosphorus uptake, phosphorus being another nutrient that leads to algae blooms, and up to 3 times the atrazine degradation of the unforested reaches, atrazine being an ag herbicide, sort of a stand-in for a whole host of organic pesticides. It's not hard to know why that reality exists, why 3 to 5 times more biological activity in forested reaches. It's better habitat, better conditions for the organisms that we rely upon to do this critical work, more and preferred food sources. There's a whole lot of bugs just cannot eat grass and multiflora rose and invasive species of other kinds. The energy to drive these stream systems to do society's critical water quality work is from the surrounding landscape as much as it is from in-stream itself. Solid carbon from trees, leaves, twigs, pollen is a huge infusion of energy to streams, but it really only amounts to about 1/3 of what's available. More than half of the energy to drive these biological processes that our society relies upon, more than half of that energy is you're actually looking at in this photograph. It's that brown color, which Stroud calls watershed T. It's the dissolved organic compounds that come out of the leaves and the forest floor, come out of the soil, make their way to the stream, and provide more than half, almost 2/3 of the available energy to drive stream ecosystem function is actually that dissolved organic carbon. If you've consumed much Turkey Hill iced tea, it's got a lot of energy in it. So the why there's 3 to 5 times more biological activity in forested reaches is, number one, better habitat, we've just touched on briefly, but more habitat. And I will challenge you to look for this. I was in my 40s before I realized and saw this for myself. Here's a section of stream just upstream from our lab in outside of Avondale. that wetted perimeter of that stream that you're looking at, that is about 15 to 18 feet across. That's a lot of area for bugs to set up shop and do their work. Here is the same stream about 100 yards upstream. We've gone through a fence into a horse pasture. That stream is probably 3 feet wide. So we'd be looking at something on the scale of a 5-fold difference in width. You know, I chose a dramatic example. This study found that forested streams were 2 to 3 times wider than they are in grassy areas. The grass just grabs the sediment, holds on to it, and narrows in the stream until the shear velocity of the water forces and the ability of grass to hold sediment are finding equilibrium. Who cares? Well, we care because it's these organisms that populate the perimeter of the channel that do the work of removing nitrates and atrazine and phosphorus and other contaminants that we let get into our streams. And if the forested stream is twice as wide or 3 times as wide, there's 2 or 3 times as much surface area for those organisms to set up shop. So that's it in a nutshell on why forested buffers are important, and particularly how they ramp up those in-stream services. I'm going to take just a little bit of time to talk about how we approach at Stroud, how we approach forested buffer restoration. We've been studying how to do buffers better since the mid-'80s. And the current methods that we use, after 4 years, we should still see 85 to 95% of the planted trees still alive and thriving with the methods we've come across over the years and refined. So this is a good representation of how we approach doing forested buffers. 5-foot tall tree shelters on tree seedlings, provide mowing, provide protection from voles, and you can expect is about an 8-year gap of a lapse of time on this photograph from the last one. And we can expect that kind of success in the rich conditions that we have here in Chester County. To take you through some of the details, and you'll see the same slide with different verbiage in the red boldface just to emphasize a particular point. Choosing native species that are suited to the site, particularly soil moisture, is really critical. You cannot plant a red oak tree, however much you may want a red oak. You can't plant it in a soggy streamside area and have it succeed. It just won't work. They're suited to upland drained areas. There's plenty of resources to help guide what trees are suited to these conditions. We take a lot of hassle out of this process by selecting a species mix that are basically all tolerant to a wide variety of conditions, from fairly dry to fairly wet conditions. And that frees us from a whole lot of concern about needing to make sure that contractors plant the right tree at the right place. Secondly, use a 5-foot tree shelter with a burst feature, basically a perforation on the tube, and leave that sucker in place. Do not take it off. You'll see why here in a second. We just leave the tree shelters in place till the trees remove them on their own, unless you really see specific reasons to remove them. We just see so many heartbreaking tragedies where tubes are removed when trees are about 2 inches in diameter, and the buck in Chester County just go nuts on them. And I don't know what's with them lately, but they are really killing us. So here is a graph. We've been following just over 1,000 tree tubes and the trees in them. We treated 100 of those tubes by fully removing the tubes when the trees were about 2 inches in diameter. We split the tube top to bottom with a case knife, that the tree would not have this tightly bound tube, tugging on it as it grows bigger. And then on the other 426 trees, we left the tubes in place, just basically neglected them, just left them in place. And what you see is this graph up the vertical axis is what percentage of those trees got buck rubbed by year 3, where we took the tubes off. And we only took 100 of them off because we knew what would happen pretty clearly. Almost half of them got rubbed to the point where they're not going to enter the canopy anytime soon, if ever. When we left them in place, we had exactly 0 buck rub. Brian, is that utility bar obscuring the slide at this point? You're not seeing that? Okay, it's on my screen. Can't see the graph. So the point is, leave the tubes in place unless there's really clear evidence that the tube is doing harm to the tree. Thirdly, protect trees from voles. Voles are important native mammals. They're food for a whole lot of creatures, but they are mischief in a tree planting. They do this to trees, and it's heartbreaking. So for 20 years, this has been the gold standard of how to protect trees. Clean culture. That's a 3-foot diameter herbicide spot. 10 years ago, we started researching, went through about 4 generations of trials, trying to figure out how to grow trees without the reliance on herbicides. And this is where we have come to. Stone mulch is our new standard, and this has become our basically our solid approach for getting the job done. It's 2A modified stone, which means the dust all the way up through about 3/4 inch diameter in size. We did head-to-head tests with the gold standard, the 36-inch herbicide spot. We put stone mulch on about 40 pounds. It was a lot. We didn't want to underdo it in the early trials. Put on a 20-inch diameter by about 2 inches thick of that 2A modified stone. And then we said, can we get away with using less? We put 12-inch diameter on by 2 inches thick. And then we followed these for 4 years. Here is survivorship after 4 years. The 20-inch diameter stone treatment, it was statistically significant better survivorship through 4 years than the gold standard, which was the herbicide spot. The narrower 12-inch diameter stone circle was about the same, no statistically significant difference versus the gold standard herbicide spot, 3-foot diameter. Looking now at growth, we got as good growth statistically from that 20-inch diameter stone treatment as the herbicide, the left-hand bar, would provide. And we lost a little bit of growth with the 12-inch diameter stone mulch. It's just not providing a big free to grow, free from competition for light, moisture, and nutrients the way the big cushy herbicide spot would do. But I am not worried giving away some growth. We actually have some problems with trees that grow too fast and then flop over and wreck themselves. We did this primarily to get away from the use of herbicides because of contractor labor exposure. We have contractors who are not excited about having their laborers day in, day out spraying herbicides, and I get it. What we didn't expect to find is the stone mulch methodology actually winds up costing about half or a third as much as the 4 years of twice-a-year herbicide applications, and a whole lot less hassle for managing the deployment of contractors to do the work. So this is really becoming our standard practice. In the last few years, we've done more than 100 acres with stone mulch and are happy with what we are seeing. Moving on, mowing the site we have found to be important. A couple times a year for 3 or 4 years. If you're going to mow, we have done it at the landowner's request, planted on a crazy random pattern. The mower who was contracted to do that site, David, he said, can you talk them into putting them on rows, please? I'm going crazy. So planting on curving parallel rows. I heard foresters talk about overgrowth of grass as the green death. The probability of finding a live tree in that buried tree shelter is really, really low. This is what the foresters call the green death, just too much grass. And then the last thing, southeastern Pennsylvania, for historical reasons, is an epicenter of invasives and nasty plants in Pennsylvania. And left untreated, those nasty plants really become problems inside of tree shelters. So we've been using pre-emergence herbicides. They prevent seeds from germinating inside the tree shelters. We use a product called Snapshot. You may be familiar with a product called Preen that's used on flower beds, etc. Same thing, keep seeds from germinating. We apply this with that shaker We apply that in February or March. We'll have to reapply it in May or June, and we are weed free through August. We use that for 2 or 3 years till the trees emerge. And that left-hand photograph, what you're seeing there is, if you don't do anything, plants like Oriental bittersweet will actually vigorously outgrow the trees and become serious problems to being successful in establishing your stuff. So we use that shaker, just walk by the tube, drop like salt in your French fries, just shake the granules down the tube and on to the next tube twice a year. So some fine print, and I'm wrapping up. We would count on partners to help us identify sites. We're hoping to find sites that are 2 acres and up without livestock. I am probably in a position where we can look at sites as small as 1 acre if a partner can be found to perform the mowing. It's simply the case that finding contract mowers to mobilize mowers to remote sites when they're small just gets really hard to hold their interest. It gets hard to afford the high costs that they need to be interested. And on livestock, I won't rule out the possibility we probably can secure funding to do sites that need livestock exclusion, whether it's horses, dairy animals, beef stock, whatever. But the main set of funds we have is for trees for planting and the care after planting. Happy to talk to you about sizes of projects and livestock as needed. We would put in place design and cover it with a 25-year agreement. I can get you those documents to look at. I don't think you'll be surprised or shocked. We would love if a partner can be enlisted, for example, a township on a township park. They may say, hey, we can pick up the mowing. We're there mowing the ball fields anyways. We'll just mow down the buffer alleyways. That would be fantastic. That is one of our bottlenecks, is finding the help to do the mowing. Then partners would perform the care beyond year 3. That could include mowing if you've got invasive species in particular. Sometimes repair after floods, but by the time trees are 3 years old, they're pretty well flood tolerant. They're not going to lay down and have the shelters and stakes hold them down at age 3. And it's not as though Stroud is looking to walk away from the sites. We just have to be able to be clear about what our financial commitments are for 3 years. We're happy to keep talking and being engaged on sites, but we need to know what our financial commitments are, particularly. And then page 2 of the fine print. Our society has defined a forested buffer as at least 35 feet wide per side. We can go as wide as 300 feet with the funding that we have. We're typically planting 2-year-old seedlings, 18 to 30 inches tall, on a 15 by 15 spacing. A detailed maintenance plan as part of the agreement will cover the costs for 3 years. We're going to do that with stone mulch in most cases. And sites, let's say you've got a major infestation of Phragmites or multiflora rose or Japanese hops or whatever else. So we have a budget for site prep, but we can't do major infestation removal on every site. So we'll just have to talk about that site by site. Maybe a partner can help out, etc. And just to clarify, most of our funding is coming from Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and most of the work is done by contractors, not Stroud staff. So we're working with professionals with the kind of capacity that they bring. So at this point, Brian, I'll open it up to Q&A. I'll let you manage that, and we'll take as much time as people care to have, and I'll let you manage it from here. Thanks for your interest.
Thanks, David. Really appreciate the presentation. So this is a chance for you to ask any questions if you have projects or that you want to share with others. So I'll open the floor here.
David?
Yes,
David. Hi. This is Diana from Brandywine at Thornberry.
Thank you.
Hi. So this is amazing because we have a large area along Radley Run that some of it is forested and a large chunk of it is just open land we mow once a year. So someone would come out and help us evaluate, I guess, the best process forward for our board.
Yep. We'll
What,
set up the
what
time to come
land
out,
work?
meet and look at things. Pardon me?
I was gonna say, what of our land is appropriate?
Correct.
We have a large stream that flows through. It's totally open with nothing on either side, so.
Gotcha.
That, does it have to plan on either side? Because one side is flat to a period and then hilly, but the other
Yeah,
is a
no,
large.
we would love to do both sides. Clearly, ecologically, there's good reason. Sometimes ownership is split by the stream, and we're prepared to do just one side. And I should clarify, like if folks have a stream that may have, let's say, 40 feet or 50 feet of existing trees on it, but there's open space behind that, we are perfectly content to help widen an existing buffer. We can even do some upgrades to the buffer that's there if it has, invasives problems and things like that. So I think there's room. We're sort of hoping to find sites that can add at least, 2 acres of new footprint, but happy to help push along some existing stuff that maybe needs some care and feeding.
The area I'm thinking about is totally open, has nothing.
Gotcha.
But Radley Run runs through our community from US 202. It runs all the way through under 926 onto Craybilly. So some of it is got foresting on both sides. A lot of it is just totally open land. We mow once a year.
Yeah. So you see my contact information there. Shoot me an email and we'll have one of our staffers come out, look at the site with you and see what next steps are.
That would be great. Now you will send us the slides, because then I'll be able to grab it from that.
I wasn't planning on sending the slides out. I don't know if Brian, if you have that possibility, but dwise@stroudcenter.org.
I got it. I got you. You're easy, DWise. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your interest.
Dave, I have a question. How are you?
Good.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, just fine.
Okay. I feel like my computer isn't working properly. Are sites with reed canary grass acceptable? And would we be expected to treat that first?
No,
I'm an invasive weed person here.
So Shane, the details get a little complicated. Depending where the site is, we may have some deeper pockets than the DCNR grant alone. The DCNR grant is sort of a bare bones, but if it's in William Penn Foundation's focus areas, we can tap those funds to help cover what will be some fairly high costs. I will not promise success in Phragmites. We now have about 5 sites. We've worked through 2 of them, and I think we're on a good path. But the jury's still out because we're not successfully established with a canopy that's shading out the Phragmites. We're still in the midst of the fight. So, but we're learning. I think we have things to offer, and I think we'd be happy to meet and talk about a site that has that kind of a need. It will be expensive.
Yeah, well, I know we would have funds that we could partner with you on, either for mowing or invasive treatment. A couple other questions I had. I'm assuming we would do the initial outreach with any landowner and have them ready to go, or at least willing to talk to you guys.
Sure.
Okay.
I think that can be managed as makes sense for the context, Shane.
Yep. And then timeline. Yep. How long do you have these funds until? Like, when do they need to be spent? Like, what's your timeline?
We have had all the funds that we've been able to spend for pushing 2.5 decades now. So funds for a particular grant will come and go. Society's need for forested buffers is here to stay. My suspicion is the value this represents to our society. We're going to have funding on an ongoing basis. So
great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks for your interest.
Before Zach jumps in, thanks, Zach. Follow-up question, David. We had a buffer that had reed canary grass that suffered from the green death. By half the trees died. We replanted it. The owner is now mowing that regularly, and that seems to be all the difference in the world. We treated it once, didn't work. Anyway, is that an effective method?
Yeah, and I think to go hand in hand with that, The reed canary is also oftentimes really strong vole habitat. So the reed canary can kill your trees outright by just the intensity of competition for light, moisture, and nutrients. Sometimes moisture is the least of the worries. There's some evidence that there's chemical warfare going on there with Phragmites as well. But don't forget about the voles. I mean, the other thing you want to make sure is that there's some manner of protection from the voles.
Right.
Either the 3-foot diameter spots or stone mulch or something, because they are a force to be reckoned with. And voles tend to have a fondness for sites with really strong hydrology. My assumption is this is a winter thermal subsidy for them. If groundwater is there, it's not going to get colder than, groundwater temperatures. Whereas an upland context could be down in sub-zero temperatures. They seem to be happy with, the thermal baths of shallow groundwater that keep them warm.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Hey David, I have a quick question. Is this just for Chester County municipalities, HOAs, and private landowners, or are you thinking kind of the surrounding area as well?
Yeah, it has to be Pennsylvania. I think we are
Okay.
open to talking about other areas where we're active. I have colleagues that are active in Berks and Lancaster. We have designs to be active in Lebanon and Bradford. What county are you thinking about, Zach?
I mostly do Delaware County, but I know there's some of the watersheds go into Chester County. So yeah, so that's just kind of my thought. But I was just curious, what were the, I guess, eligibility requirements?
Yeah, I'm able to take that on a case-by-case basis. I think we're,
Okay.
It's the funding is not limited to Chester County. This
Okay.
outreach push we have designed specifically for Chester County, but we're not limited there. So I think there's plenty of room to have that conversation, Zach.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you bet.
David, Zach's a good contact with Pennsylvania Sea Grant for future reference.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for being here.
Dave, I'll ask you one more question while we still have you. With the tubes on the trees and waiting until they kind of pop off the trees, sometimes they don't seem to want to pop off the trees, and we notice like moisture like getting in the tube and insects getting in and causing damage. So we've cut like the bottom 6 inches or 8 inches off just to get, and then like ripped it a little to give it a little bit more airflow. I'm assuming
it's all good.
Okay. Okay.
Right. Yep, that's all good. Think about it from a buck's perspective. They're not rubbing down at the ground level.
Yeah.
You see the rub. It's from a foot to 3 feet above the ground. They're lazy and crazy. Yeah. And I would say, we're not really sure that the additional cost for vented tubes is worth it. They are significantly more expensive. It's additional process that the manufacturers have to go through to punch those holes in. But it does, in the back of our minds, help mitigate some of that trapped moisture risk. And there are some risks. It's just that in Chester County, without a tube on, the risk from bucks is so devastating that, take your gamble with fungus or, other stuff. So we've not seen, that 1,000 trees we followed, we did not see, I don't know that we saw even a single tree evidence of moisture leading to canker and rot and disease and stuff. And that's not to say it won't happen, but is to say it's not like it's everywhere haunting every tree, for sure.
Thanks.
Good questions.
I know Mark and Sheila are on from Nixon Park, David, and they have these 6-foot solid tubes on swamp white oak that have just done, these trees have grown tremendous. But I have seen what Shane described, a lot of moisture, even moss growing in there with no vents. And that's the only time I've seen that. So I know we've done, like Shane said, actually I cut those off on a few of your trees, Mark, before you started there, and just put a vented tube on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
But-
tended to use a lot of the venting tubes more recently for the ones I put in. I just find that they give better air circulation as well.
Yeah, and I would say, if you have shelters in place that you're concerned about moisture conditions, that idea of taking a case knife and splitting it, and you can get a hooked case knife that you don't run the risk of running your blade into the tree. It'll just, grab the edge and slice it. If you want to finesse it, you can leave about 2 inches in the middle of the tube intact, and it'll keep the tube on more reliably. Once you split it the whole way top to bottom, if a buck does start on it, he might get the whole tube off, or the wind might take it off. And then you're sitting there, without any deterrent to rub. They don't like to rub on plastic, so it really helps. But yeah, if there's moisture and funk going on, doing something, at least splitting it the majority of the way to get some better ventilation is smart. We're not seeing a lot of that, but I'm sure there are cases where it's happening. So.
This is Sheila from the Kent Area Park Authority. I have a question about the process to determine whether or not we're eligible for this program.
Yep.
We've done extensive riparian buffer plantings as part of the stream restoration in the park, but there are a couple of areas that I think might benefit from this that are very grassy. What are the next steps?
I think to reach out at my email, and I'll pass you on to one of our field guys or gals who would come out, meet with you, look at the site, take stock of goodness of fit. I'm not sure there's a shortcut. I won't presume upon an answer or try to answer remotely. But yeah, happy to do that.
Thanks.
Jill, I'm happy to walk out there with you and Mark too, knowing the site. I think there are some areas where we could expand that buffer wider than where it is in some places.
Yeah, and Brian, if that's an area where you're already active and want to do that follow-up, I'm completely content, however things can work out best. So.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sheila.
We're so glad to have Mark there helping take care of all those trees planted. So that's awesome.
Yes, we are.
Anyone else? So, David, if you're okay with me sharing the PDF of the slides and the
Sure.
video, I'll share that with.
Yeah. People want to get that out virally. It's all good. I don't get any markup for this, and we just want to get the information out. So thanks.
Right. I think a lot of people on this call represent agencies who are in contact with landowners as well. Joe, Zach, Shane, Suna. So we'll get the word out. Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
if there's a way, Brian, to have that available that people can, find an archived version that, weren't able to be here today or whatever, be my guest. It actually serves us well because we can link to it. We always intend to film these presentations. We never do. And the best resources we have are people who've done Zooms with us and recorded it, and we can just link back to their site. And we've got the work we've done because of their hard efforts.
Yeah. Yeah, we're happy to do that. And while they're there, they could check out, Meadows and other workshops. So that's all good. Great. Thanks, everybody. Sharing your lunchtime with us. Thank you, David, for your time and this program.
My pleasure.
Thanks,
Thanks,
David.
everybody.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian and David.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Yeah, take care. Brian, if there's anything more to talk about, be in touch.
Will do. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.